Hello and welcome along to part 3 in my series where I talk about Action Comics, the only UK kids comic that ever got banned. Now, in my previous 2 videos, which I will link down below, I talked about the comics that I used to look at leading up to me buying Action, and also actions in part 2, actions number 1 to number 20, which were considered the higher grade quality copies, which are on a slightly smaller, finer grade copy. Now, from number 21, they sort of progressed in, well, saying they progressed, they didn't really progress. They progressed into a larger form. They had the tendency to sort of fall to bits. They had, most of them had staples in them. A lot of them didn't have the pair of staples in them at all. And also, these ones were considered to be the lesser grade quality copies. So number 21 was from the 3rd of July 1976. Now this one here, as I speak to you, is the 4th of July 2020. So this one has just turned 44 years old. Can you believe it? And it's still alive. So yes, so these were the larger ones, which I did like. These were all sent to my grand's house, and I used to pick them up from there. I remember being entranced by a character in here called Alrico from Death Game 1999. He was a sort of bionic mutant, which was, I think he was mutilated in a game of Spinball, and they brought him back as a sort of cyborg character, and he was terrorizing the game and just basically just maiming and killing people, which the audience loved. And he was, for me, he was one of the best characters that I've ever seen in action. Very memorable. So number 22 is the 10th of July 1976, and I like this cover because it was one of them covers that looked like it had spent a bit more time on it, and I always thought that it stood out for me. It was one of my favorite covers in action. And this will Dredger have to use his magnum. I used to love the fact that Dredger had a magnum as well. Very Clint Eastwood, of course it was. And in action at this point, you used to get, as it did in most comics of this time, you would get adverts for things. Now I had adverts like this, which is for the Planet of the Apes. Now I think these are the Mego characters, the Mego action figures, 8-inch action figures, which I used to have as well. I used to collect most of them, and they're all long gone, but this brought back a few memories. Now next you've got number 23, which is the 17th of July 1976. Now this one, for some reason, I remember drawn all over the cover, and had to get a replacement off eBay. A lot of these are replacements for my original ones, which were either a bit written on, which is ridiculous, and also some of them just literally dropped the bits through reading them as well. Now next is number 24, which is the 24th of July 1976. Now this one here said, "Who is top of the Spinball League? Assassins, Butchers, or the Killers? And $1 million for the man who will fight to the death with Hookjaw." So he had a lot of sensationalistic titles on here and drawn you into the comic, which made you feel what is lurking in this action comic. And usually, well, all the time, especially in the pre-banned action comics, you were never disappointed. This, like I say, this the 24th of July had a great Hookjaw strip where he was drugged from the last episode, the last comic, and then they had him out there and somebody was posing for a camera shot, and well, of course he came back to life, didn't he? Or came out of his after they were taking photographs of him, and then he killed the bloke who was in his jaws. Of course he did. Now the next one is number 25. It's the 31st of July 1976. It features on the cover the great Alrico busting out of something, and this is one of my favourite covers as well. It's this, like I say, the storyline of Alrico was just one of my favourite ones. Just couldn't get enough of this fella. I wish he'd been in more episodes. I've got to admit, or more comics, more weekly comics. Now the next one is number 26. It is the 7th of August 1976. Now this one here, it says, "Set a shark to catch a shark." Now this was the one that featured the robotic shark that they tried to set on Hookjaw. And who do you think is going to win that fight? Yep. So there is what is he called again, that fella? Dr. Gelder. And he set up this resort. And in this resort, he wants to sort of catch Hook Joe, to have Hook Joe perform, which was never going to happen. So I think he made this bionic shark, or this, how can I say, sort of mechanic shark. And they set them two together to a fight to the death. Now the next one is number 26, and it's it's number 27, and it's the 14th of August, 1976. Great cover as well, telling you exactly what's in here. Hook Joe, Death Game 1999, Look Out for Lefty, which wasn't one of my favourite strips, and Hell's Highway. In fact, Look Out for Lefty was probably my least favourite of all Action comics. And this one here is memorable for obviously the shark as well, the two sharks fighting with each other, Hook Joe and the robotic shark. And also, unfortunately, it is the last appearance of my favourite character, one of my favourite characters, Al Rico, who met his untimely end. Now next is the 21st of August 1976, it's number 28. And this is, like I say, another great cover on there. Wanna Die for $10,000. And I think it's got people who were just trying to get this action, this Hook Joe series, this Hook Joe story was all about people trying to get this resort, to try and get people to come to this resort by using Hook Joe as bait for them to come, as like a sort of an entertainment piece. And Action's only out once a week, because you'll need 6 days to recover. Great taglines they've got in this one. Now 29 is the 28th of August 1976. Another one of those, Action is the name of the game. Ball game, death game, war game, big game. Who can catch Hook Joe? Another great cover. Now next is number 30 from the 4th of September 1976. Die Panzers. Don't show action to your dad or he'll keep it for himself. I reckon that was quite true as well. Another solid, in fact these ones at this point were starting to get more and more aggressive and more dangerous, should I say, and this is probably led until the withdrawal of Action and the complete banning of Action until it came back. Now the next one is number 31, and it is the 11th of September 1976. Now this one here started off, in this one you had the last ever Blackjack, who was in Action from number 1, and this was the end of Blackjack, who got his sight back. And when he got his sight back, the fella said to him, well, what are you going to do now? And he said, I'm going to go and win the World Heavyweight Championship again, which probably is not the best thing to do just after you've lost your sight for a few years. I think the British Board of Boxing Control might have something to say about that. So in this Action, what was not said on the front was the fact that one of the greatest characters as well in Action, Rick Mason, was actually, who had fought Hook Joe many times, was met with a really shocking exit in Action. Probably, as many people will say, it is probably the most shocking Action story ever. The fact that Rick Mason, who could do anything, he'd been ripped to bits by the shark in all his life, actually died at the hands of Hook Joe. And I remember them in that as well, which was a bit of a shocking twist. He used to seem to carry his head around quite a bit to prove to this Dr. Gelder what his sort of greed had done. And I remember when this one came out, I was in shock. I could not believe that Rick Mason had died, and I was looking at it thinking, well, maybe they could sew his head onto somebody's body, or maybe it's not his head. I was putting all these stupid perspectives into place to just say, can we not have Rick Mason shouldn't die? But this will be in action, takes no prisoners. And this one here is the first episode of Kids Rule OK, which was a quite unique story about this virus. We're in the middle of a virus now. This virus wiped out all the elderly people, and it left all the kids, or most of the kids, on the streets. And the first pane is from here. It says, if horror is what you want, read on. And they've got this fella, and they're kicking his teeth out, and this fella says, I got him, Bagsy, kick his flaming teeth in. So yes, so I think this was the start of when the people, the Mary Whitehouse Brigade and all them people used to take a bit of notice of this action and say, I think they're getting a little bit out of hand. We didn't think that, the kids didn't think that, but the adults certainly did. Now this one here is a quite infamous cover, and this is one of my original ones because it's got my address, my grand's address at the top in pencil. I could rub it off, but I want to keep it on there for sentimental reasons, nostalgia. And this comic here, this cover here from the 18th of September, number 33, could be one of the main reasons why action was banned. I think this is one of the ones where people took a bit of too much of a notice of it, and they started to think that this might be influencing kids to go out and be maniacs. I don't think it ever did, but when somebody gets the teeth into this, like the Sun and Mary Whitehouse, it was really only a matter of time. But us as kids, we used to just get this, look through it, probably show it to your mates and say, have you seen what's in action this week? I can't believe it. And it was one of them ones where you wanted it to be worse and worse as it went along. And it did get worse and worse as it went along. Like more adult, for want of a better word. The next one is number 34. And this here is the 25th of September. And it shows off a new comic strip called The Probationer. And which is another one it's not really for kids, but it takes guts to read action. Yep, it just seems to be aiming at a sort of level that's not for young kids, but all the young kids was buying it. And also in this one, it showed you an advert for the first ever Action Annual, which was released at the end of 1976, or just about here. And also it's the only one the only action that came out, there was a pre-ban action, and it's got a lot of blood and guts in it. All the other ones were very tamed down, and probably a shadow of them for themselves, as you'll find with all the other actions after the post-ban. But that's for another story, another video, should I say. Now, number 35 is the 2nd of October 1976, and it is a new Hook Jaw episode here. They were starting to have a new they'd finished off that whole island thing with Dr. Gelder and Rick Mason, and they moved on to this other new story, which they introduced in this one. But with this being really towards the end of, there's only another two episodes, comics to come after this. It was never going to get finished, but it was shaping up to be quite a good one. You still had Kids Rule OK, and it was. There was another thing where, for instance, if it isn't here, no, it's the next one. The new Hook Jaw was there, still with blood all over the place. Something you'd come to expect from Hook Jaw, and obviously you wanted him in the centre page as well. When he wasn't in the centre page, it was kind of a big disappointment. Now, number 36 is the penultimate action. This is from the 9th of October 1976. And it's number 36, and this one here there was little things like, even in Dredger, which I found not to be a very gruesome comic strip, shall I say, had a one where somebody's head was in a box, and there were things like that were just were just finding its way in all different parts of the Action comic, and it was just inevitable, really, looking back on it, that there were, although I was totally oblivious of all this going on, I just expected to see Action in all its glory every week, as probably everybody else did at this point. I don't know if anybody had the sort of heads up that Action was going to meet an untimely end. Drop something in the comments there and tell us that about your experiences when this comic got banned and how your feeling was, and did you know anything about it getting banned, or did you just sort of just think, well, where is it? I don't think my newsagents knew anything about it being banned, actually. They just knew it wasn't there. And this leads on, sadly, to the last ever Action pre-ban. And it means that this was the one that was the end of this. If you want to collect all of the pre-bans, you need to get like my previous video and also this video and put them together, and it'll tell you all the covers, and it'll make useful for a sort of reference point of view. Now this one here, yeah, I mean, you know, I think there might have been courting controversy. This is the last ever one for Action. All the stories you could tell, there was plenty more life in all the stories. When a lot of the stories didn't come back after the ban, which is another story. And this one here, and some of these ones in this, there's no free gifts with any of these ones. So usually you're missing pages as well when they've got like something in the middle, when they have a fold out posters or anything like that. There's nothing should be missing from these comics, so when you buy them, they should all be complete. They shouldn't have any of the pages missing of them. So, and I remember seeing this, there's an advertisement here as well for the comic, which I used to look at and I thought was, you should get this one. I think it was really good, and I remember having them free glow in the dark teeth as well, and used to love them, actually, them teeth. And this is the Crazy comic, which gave birth to Cheeky comic. I thought Cheeky come from something else, but it was definitely Crazy. So yes, so that's it. That's all of the actions until the next video, part 4, which I'll take you through the post-ban Action comics. This is after it got banned. This is when it was very much watered down, and it could be classed as, although I still enjoyed it to a certain extent, it still can be classed as a bit of a disappointment considering what you used to get and see in all the first 37 Actions. Now, weirdly enough, I was just looking at this version of Action, although to me it seemed like it was around forever. It was only actually out for 8 months. Now you think of 8 months in these days, and it just seems to fly over like in a heartbeat. Now, back in the day, I used to think that this was something that went on forever, but looking back on it, 8 months is no time at all. The whole span of the comic was maybe about 1.5 years or 2 years. So it's no time at all, really, but I suppose in them times when you're in 7, you think everything's that slow. Okay, so thanks once again for watching. If you like this video, please like, please comment, and please subscribe if you like, it's free. And I will see you on the next video, and you take care. See you later.